I never asked to be born. Hell, my parents never asked for me either. The way my mom tells it, she was young and stupid, head over heels for some guy who couldn't keep it in his pants. Next thing you know, boom, baby on the way. That baby was me, Sheila, the mistake. Mom wanted to get rid of me, but both sets of grandparents found out and shut that down real quick. Back then, you didn't raise kids alone. So Mom and Dad got hitched, and I came along kicking and screaming 9 months later. Dad never let me forget how I'd ruined his life. There goes my youth, he'd mutter every time he looked at me. To him, I wasn't a daughter, I was a ball and chain, dragging him down from the life he thought he deserved. For 10 years, it was just the three of us in that little house. Me, tiptoeing around, trying not to piss off Dad. Mom, cooking and cleaning like her life depended on it. And Dad, coming home from work with a scowl that only deepened when he saw me. Then came the miracle, my little sister. Sarah, the golden child. The one they actually wanted. And me? I was shoved even further into the background. Sheila, watch your sister. Sheila, be quiet. Sarah's sleeping. Sheila, why can't you be more like Sarah? It was Sarah this, Sarah that. She got new clothes, I got hand-me-downs. She got praise, I got scolded. She got love, I got used to disappointment. By the time I was 10, I was doing most of the housework. Scrubbing toilets, mopping floors, dusting shelves, you name it, I did it. Not that I got any thanks for it. It was just expected. But there was one chore I didn't mind, cooking. Something about mixing ingredients, creating flavors, it felt like magic. I remember the first time I made my special lasagna for a family gathering. Aunt Linda took a bite and her eyes lit up. Mary, this is incredible. When did you become such a master chef? Mom just smiled and nodded, soaking up the praise. I stood in the corner, invisible as always. Actually, I made it, I said, trying to make my voice heard. Aunt Linda laughed, like I'd just told a joke. Sheila likes to help in the kitchen sometimes, Mom cut in smoothly, still basking in the compliments. Isn't that right, dear? I shut my mouth, knowing it was pointless. No one ever believed me anyway. Growing up, the kitchen became my sanctuary. While Sarah got showered with attention and gifts, I found solace in pots and pans. By the time I hit high school, I could whip up a mean pot roast that even Dad couldn't complain about. Not bad, he'd grunt, shoveling food into his mouth. Coming from him, that was high praise. But it wasn't just about feeding my family. I had bigger dreams. Every night, I'd close my eyes and picture it, my own restaurant, bustling with happy customers, all of them savoring my creations. One night at dinner, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I want to open a restaurant someday, I blurted out. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Sarah snickered. You? A restaurant? Mom looked concerned, like I'd just announced I wanted to be an astronaut. Dad didn't even look up from his plate. Restaurants fail all the time, you'd be broke in a month. But I'm good at cooking, I protested. Everyone likes my food. Everyone likes free food, Dad scoffed. Doesn't mean they'd pay for it. Sarah piped up, her voice sickeningly sweet. Maybe you could work at McDonald's, Sheila. I hear they're always hiring. When it came time for college, I set my sights on the best culinary school I could find. To my shock, Dad agreed to pay for it. This is your inheritance, he said gruffly. Don't expect anything else. The house, the savings, that's all going to Sarah. I should have been hurt, but honestly, I was too excited about culinary school to care. This was my chance to prove myself, to learn from real chefs and hone my skills. College was a whirlwind of chopping, sautéing, and baking. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. My classmates actually appreciated my cooking, and my instructors praised my creativity. But reality came crashing back when I graduated. With no money for my own place, I had to move back home. The contrast between my college life and my family's indifference was stark. "So, you're a chef now?" Sarah smirked over dinner. "Does that mean you'll be doing all the cooking from now on?" Mom jumped in before I could respond. "That's a wonderful idea. Sheila can cook, and you can focus on your studies, dear." And just like that, I was back to being the family maid. But this time, with a culinary degree gathering dust on my shelf. I managed to land a job as an assistant chef at a local restaurant. The pay was lousy, but it was a foot in the door. Every night, I'd come home exhausted, only to face a mountain of dishes and laundry. "This is your rent," Mom would say, handing me a list of chores. "You're not a child anymore. You need to contribute." But I didn't let it break me. Every spare moment, I was planning, dreaming, scheming. I knew that someday, somehow, I'd have my own restaurant. And when that day came, I'd show them all what Sheila was really capable of. 2 years crawled by, each day a carbon copy of the last. I cooked, I cleaned, I worked my ass off at the restaurant, and I watched as Sarah continued to be showered with everything I'd ever wanted. The day Sarah started high school, Dad came home with a shit-eating grin on his face. "Sarah, honey," he called out. "Come see what I got you." We all trooped outside. There, sitting in our driveway like some kind of shiny insult, was a brand new car. A fucking car. "But, I can't even drive yet," Sarah said, her eyes wide. Dad laughed, tossing her the keys. "You will soon enough. My girl deserves the best, right from the start." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. When I turned 16, I got a second-hand bike. And even that was only because I needed it to get to my part-time job. It didn't stop there. Every week, there was something new for precious Sarah. The latest iPhone, a MacBook Pro, designer clothes. They even renovated her bedroom, turning it into something that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. Meanwhile, I was still in my old room. The same faded wallpaper, the same creaky bed I'd had since I was 10. But hey, at least the spiders kept me company, right? I started thinking about moving out. Maybe I could find a roommate, split the rent on some tiny apartment. Anything would be better than this constant reminder of how little I mattered. But then came Christmas. I'd been saving up, determined to get everyone nice gifts for once. Show them I wasn't the failure they thought I was. I ended up buying lottery tickets for everyone, not the cheap scratch-offs, but tickets for the big jackpot. Christmas morning came, and I handed out the envelopes, trying not to look too eager. Mom opened hers first. Her face fell. "Oh, lottery tickets." Dad snorted. "What is this, a gas station gift?" Sarah didn't even bother opening hers. She just rolled her eyes. "Gee, thanks Sheila, real thoughtful." "Well," Mom said, her voice sickly sweet, "I guess since Sheila didn't really get us anything, she won't be expecting any gifts either. That seems fair, doesn't it?" I felt a lump forming in my throat. Without a word, I snatched the lottery tickets from Dad's hand. "You know what? I'll take them. Merry bloody Christmas." I stormed out, ignoring their shocked faces. Screw their family dinner. I texted my coworker, Jen. "Hey, you still at the restaurant? Mind some company?" An hour later, I was sitting at the bar of the closed restaurant, nursing a glass of cheap champagne with Jen. As the night wore on, Jen and I traded stories about horrible families and crushed dreams. It wasn't exactly a Hallmark Christmas, but at least I felt less alone. A few days later, I was at work as usual. During the break, I reached for my phone. There was a missed call from an unknown number. "Probably just another scam," I muttered, tossing the phone aside. But then it rang again. Same number. Curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. "Hello, is this Sheila Thompson?" a cheery voice asked. "Yeah, who's this?" "This is Linda from the State Lottery Commission. I'm calling to inform you that you're holding a winning ticket." I almost dropped the phone. "What? Are you serious?" "Absolutely. One of your tickets matched all the numbers in Christmas drawing." After taxes, your winnings come to $690,000. The world spun around me. In a daze, I headed home. My mind was racing. This was it. My chance to finally open my own restaurant. To show everyone what I could do. I burst through the front door, unable to contain my excitement. You won't believe what happened. They were all sitting at the kitchen table, looking at me like I'd grown a second head. I won the lottery, I blurted out. One of the tickets, the one I was going to give Mom, it won. $690,000 after taxes. For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then Sarah's shrill voice cut through the air. That money belongs to us, she screeched. You bought those tickets as gifts for Mom and Dad. Anything that belongs to them belongs to me. I felt like I'd been slapped. What? No, they gave the tickets back to me. They're mine. Mom and Dad exchanged a look. Sheila, Dad said slowly, be reasonable. You live under our roof. You owe us. Now, hand over that ticket. We'll take care of everything. I took a step back, my hand instinctively going to my pocket where the ticket was. No, I said, surprising even myself with how steady my voice was. This is my ticket, my win. I'm going to use it to open my own restaurant. Dad's face turned an alarming shade of red. Now you listen here, young lady. No, you listen. I shouted, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. I've spent my whole life being treated like a second-class citizen in this family. Well, not anymore. This is my chance, and I'm taking it. If that's how you feel, Mom said, her voice ice-cold, then you can get out of this house. Now. I stared at them, these people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. In that moment, I saw them clearly for the first time. Fine, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm gone. I stormed up to my room, threw some clothes and essentials into a bag, and walked out. They watched me go, probably thinking I'd come crawling back in a day or two. They couldn't have been more wrong. My first stop was the lottery office, to claim my winnings. Then, I headed straight to a real estate agent. I need an apartment, I told the surprised agent. Something available immediately. By that evening, I was sitting in my very own place. It wasn't much, a small one-bedroom in a decent part of town, but it was mine. All mine. As I sat on the floor, I hadn't had time to buy furniture yet, eating takeout and scrolling through restaurant equipment catalogs on my phone, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, hope. First things first, I needed a solid business plan. I spent weeks hunched over my laptop, researching, crunching numbers, and planning every detail. After what felt like a million revisions, I finally had a plan I was proud of. Next step, location. I scoured the city, looking for the perfect spot. Finally, I found it, a small, run-down space that had been empty for years. The landlord practically laughed when I said I wanted to turn it into a restaurant. Good luck with that, sweetheart, he chuckled, handing me the keys. I spent the next 3 months turning that dump into my dream. I hired contractors, picked out every fixture, and personally scrubbed every inch of the place. It was backbreaking work, but every blister and bruise felt like a badge of honor. Finally, opening day arrived. I stood in the kitchen, my kitchen, surrounded by the staff I'd handpicked and trained myself. The first order came in, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. Let's do this, I said, tying on my apron. The first few months were a whirlwind. I worked 18-hour days, cooking, managing, and doing whatever needed to be done. Slowly but surely, word started to spread. People loved my food, not just the taste, but the love and creativity I poured into every dish. I introduced a loyalty program for regular customers, giving them special discounts and first dibs on new menu items. It was a hit. Soon, I had a core group of regulars who came in so often, they felt like family. But I didn't stop there. I set up a delivery service, partnering with local couriers to bring my food right to people's homes. It was a gamble, quality control was a nightmare at first, but it paid off. Social media became my new best friend. I posted daily specials, behind-the-scenes kitchen videos, and engaged with customers online. My follower count grew, and with it, my customer base. 2 years in, I was turning a profit. It wasn't huge, but it was something. I started looking for a second location. Opening the second restaurant was easier in some ways. I knew what I was doing now, but harder in others. Suddenly, I couldn't be everywhere at once. I had to learn to delegate, to trust my staff, to maintain my standards when I wasn't there. But we made it work. And 3 years after that, I opened my third location. Before I knew it, I was the owner of a successful restaurant chain. Me, Sheila Thompson, the girl who was never supposed to amount to anything. I won't lie, it wasn't easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was in over my head. Days when I wanted to throw in the towel and admit defeat. But every time I walked into one of my restaurants, saw the happy customers, smelled the delicious food, I knew it was all worth it. It was just another Tuesday. I was in my office, going over the books for my newest restaurant, when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and froze. It was a number I hadn't seen in years, home. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But curiosity got the better of me. "Hello?" I answered, my voice cautious. "Sheila?" It was Mom. "Look, I know we've had our differences, but we need your help. It's about Sarah." Of course it was always about Sarah. "What about her?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Dad's voice came on the line. "She's in trouble, Sheila. She lost her job. They're accusing her of theft, and now no one will hire her. We were hoping you might have a position for her at one of your restaurants." I almost laughed. After everything they'd put me through, they had the nerve to ask for a favor? But then I thought about Sarah. Despite everything, she was still my sister. "Let me talk to her," I said. Sarah came on the line, her voice small and scared. "Sheila? I'm sorry for everything. I really need help." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll give you a job. But listen up, there's no special treatment. You screw up, you're out. Got it?" "Yes. Thank you, Sarah gushed. The next morning, Sarah showed up right on time, looking nervous but determined. I put her to work as an administrator, starting her with basic tasks and slowly increasing her responsibilities. To my surprise, she seemed to take it seriously. She was attentive during training, asked good questions, and didn't complain about the work. One night, as we were closing up, Sarah broke down. "I need to tell you the truth," she sobbed. "I didn't steal anything from my last job. My boss, he tried to force himself on me. When I refused, he fired me and spread rumors that I was a thief." I felt a surge of protective anger. "Why didn't you report him? Who would believe me over him?" Sarah wiped her eyes. "I was so scared, Sheila. I didn't know what to do." "I believe you," I said, pulling her into a hug. "And I'm going to help you, okay? We'll figure this out together." Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into teaching Sarah everything I knew about running a restaurant. She soaked it all up like a sponge, eager to learn and prove herself. As I watched her confidently handle a rush of customers, I felt a mix of pride and unease. Sarah was proving to be a quick study and a hard worker. But a nagging voice in the back of my head warned me not to let my guard down completely. At first, everything seemed perfect. Sarah threw herself into her work with an enthusiasm I'd never seen from her before. She was always the first to arrive and the last to leave, taking on extra shifts and volunteering for the toughest tasks. But then, whispers started reaching my ears. At first, I dismissed them as petty workplace gossip. But as the days went by, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Boss, Marco, my head chef, pulled me aside one day. "I think you need to know something. Your sister, she's been saying things. Stirring up trouble." I felt a chill run down my spine. What kind of things? Marco looked uncomfortable. She's been telling people that we're underpaid, that you're hoarding all the profits for yourself. She's even suggested we should go on strike. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's ridiculous. You all know how tight our margins are. I've always been transparent about the finances. We know, boss, Marco assured me. None of us are buying it. But, there's more. He went on to tell me how Sarah had been claiming that the restaurant rightfully belonged to her, that I had somehow cheated her out of her share of the family money. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. After everything we'd been through, after I'd given her a second chance, this is how she repaid me? I confronted Sarah that evening, my hands shaking with anger and disappointment. What the hell do you think you're doing? I demanded. Sarah's face was a mask of innocence. What are you talking about, sis? I laid out everything I'd heard. To my shock, Sarah just shrugged. Oh, that, she said casually. I was just testing the staff's loyalty. You know, making sure they wouldn't turn on you. Looks like they passed with flying colors. I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. But something in her eyes, a glint of something cold and calculating, made me hesitate. Before I could press her further, we were interrupted by a frantic knock on my office door. It was Jenna, my assistant manager, looking pale and scared. Sheila, we've got a problem, she said. There's a big shortage in the cash register. Over $5,000 missing. We spent the next few hours going over the books, checking and rechecking the numbers. There was no mistake. A significant amount of cash had vanished. Only 3 people had access to that register, Jenna, Marco, and Sarah. I'd known Jenna and Marco for years. They'd been with me from the start, through all the ups and downs. I trusted them with my life. As if reading my thoughts, Sarah sidled up to me. You know, she said in a low voice, I've noticed Jenna staying late a lot lately. And she did just buy that fancy new car. As I watched her walk away, I knew I had a decision to make. I couldn't ignore this. Too much was at stake, my business, my reputation, the livelihoods of all my loyal employees. Late one night, after everyone had gone home, I installed hidden cameras around the cash registers. It felt wrong, like I was betraying my staff's trust. But I had no choice. For days, I watched hours of mundane footage, my eyes burning from staring at the screen. And then, on the 4th night, I saw it. Sarah, moving quickly and furtively, opened the register. Her hands darted in and out, stuffing wads of cash into her pockets. My heart sank. I didn't confront her, I couldn't. Instead, I called the police. The next day, as Sarah was finishing her shift, 2 officers walked in. The look on her face when she saw them, shock, then anger, told me everything I needed to know. She thrashed around, knocking over tables and sending dishes crashing to the floor. I deserve this money. I should be rich, not you. You stole my life. As the police led her away, I felt nothing. No sadness, no regret. Just a hollow emptiness where my love for my sister used to be. The next day, my parents stormed into the restaurant. Mom was crying, Dad's face was beet red with anger. How dare you? Dad roared. Your own sister, drop the charges now. I stood my ground. No, she stole from me. She needs to face the consequences. I pulled out my phone, showing them the footage of Sarah stealing. Look, I said. This is what your precious Sarah did. She's a thief. They watched, their faces pale. But instead of understanding, their expressions hardened. You set her up, Dad accused. You've always been jealous of her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jealous? Are you kidding me? You gave me scraps and expected me to be grateful. Well, I'm done. Sarah made her choices. Now she has to live with them. They ranted and raved, alternating between threats and pleas. But I stood firm. Get out, I finally said. Get out of my restaurant, get out of my life. If you don't leave now, I'm calling the police. They left, but not before Dad spat out. You'll regret this, Sheila. Mark my words. The trial was a nightmare. Sarah's tearful performance on the stand almost had me doubting myself. But then came the surprise witness, her former boss. He testified about Sarah's behavior at her last job. How she'd aggressively pursued him, threatening to cry sexual harassment when he rejected her advances. How she'd stolen money from the company in retaliation. In the end, the jury found her guilty. As they led her away, she looked at me one last time. There was no remorse in her eyes, only cold hatred. I haven't spoken to my family since that day. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I made the right choice. But then I look around at what I've built, at the life I've made for myself, and I know I did. As I stand in the kitchen of my newest restaurant, watching my staff prepare for the dinner rush, I feel a sense of peace wash over me. This is my family now. This is my home. And nobody, not Sarah, not my parents, not anyone, can take that away from me.
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm 18 and a senior in high school. Up until recently, life was pretty decent, just me and my dad, James. Ever since my mom passed a few years back, he's been my rock, and I've been his. He's always encouraged my dreams of becoming a journalist, one who takes down corruption and fights for the truth. But then Jennifer showed up. Dad met her at some work event, and suddenly, everything shifted. She's divorced with a son named Andrew, who's 16 and about as charming as a wet sock. At first, I tried to be cool about it. Dad deserved to be happy. But something about Jennifer got under my skin. She was always cozying up to Dad, laughing at his every joke, giving me these fake, sugary smiles that never reached her eyes. "Mary, sweetie," she'd say, "you don't mind if I rearrange the living room, right? James says you're so easygoing." I'd just grit my teeth and nod. "Whatever makes you feel at home, Jennifer." But it didn't stop there. Before I knew it, Dad was talking about marriage. "Don't you think this is moving a little fast, Dad?" I asked, trying to be reasonable. He just shrugged it off. "When you know, kiddo. Jennifer makes me happy." The wedding was a blur. One minute, I was trying to be a supportive daughter. The next, I was watching Dad smash cake into the face of a woman I barely knew. Things got tense fast. I hear Jennifer and Dad arguing late at night. "James, we need a bigger place," she'd say. "This house is too small for 4 people. But Dad was firm. "We can't afford it right now, honey. Maybe in a few months." Her response was always the same. "Well, something has to give. Andrew needs his own space." I tried to ignore it, until one night, Dad knocked on my door, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Mary, honey, we need to talk." My stomach sank. "What's up, Dad?" He couldn't even look me in the eye. "Jennifer and I think it might be best if you moved into the guest room. Just temporarily, of course." I felt like I'd been punched. "You want me to give up my room for Andrew?" Dad tried to explain he's not adjusting well, and Jennifer thinks. Oh, so it's what Jennifer thinks now. All I could do was nod numbly. "Fine, whatever. I'll move my stuff tomorrow." As Dad left, I heard Jennifer downstairs. "See, James, I told you she'd understand." Moving into the guest room felt like exile. My things barely fit, and the walls felt like they were closing in on me. Meanwhile, Andrew moved into my old room as if he owned the place. "Hey sis, thanks for the upgrade," he smirked, rushing past me in the hallway. I bit my tongue hard. "It's Mary, not sis, and you're welcome, I guess." Jennifer seemed to be driving a wedge between Dad and me on purpose. Every time I tried to talk to him, she'd pop up. "James, honey, didn't you say you'd fix the leaky faucet today?" And just like that, any moment I had with Dad would vanish. Andrew's behavior was getting stranger by the day. He'd come home at odd hours, eyes red, muttering something about study groups. His moods were all over the place, laughing one second, snapping the next. I couldn't focus on school. My grades started slipping. One of my teachers pulled me aside after class. "Mary, is everything okay? This isn't like you." I just shrugged. "I'm fine. Just distracted." At lunch, I finally spilled everything to my best friend Zoe. Something's not right with Andrew, I told her. He's always sneaking around, and I swear I smelled weed in the bathroom the other day. Zoe's eyes widened. Mary, I didn't want to say anything, but I've seen him hanging out with Jake's crew behind the gym. My stomach dropped. Jake's group was known for drugs and trouble. Are you serious? Does my dad even know who he's let into our house? Zoe shook her head. I doubt it. Andrew's the type to play nice in front of the parents. I knew I had to do something, but Dad was too wrapped up in his honeymoon phase with Jennifer to see it. I need to find out what Andrew's really up to, I said, determination hardening in my voice. Zoe looked at me, her expression full of worry. Be careful, Mary. This could backfire big time. But I was done being careful. This was my home, my family, and I wasn't about to let Andrew and Jennifer tear it apart. I decided to count my savings from my part-time job at the diner, hoping I'd put away enough for emergencies. But as I counted, I felt a chill. I was missing $100. I'd been so careful, hiding my cash in different spots around my room. Someone had found it. Late that night, I heard a creak outside my door. I held my breath, heart pounding. Slowly, the door opened, and I saw Andrew's silhouette in the darkness. That's when I snapped. What the hell are you doing? I hissed, flipping on the light. Andrew jumped, eyes wide. I was just looking for more money to steal. I accused, stepping closer. His surprised expression turned cold. So what if it was? What are you going to do about it? I'm telling Dad, you little thief. Before I could react, Andrew grabbed my arm, his grip painful. You're not telling anyone. Got it? You have no idea what I'm dealing with. I yanked my arm away. Oh yeah. Why don't you enlighten me? He looked away, his voice cracking. You think it's easy moving to a new town, new school, living with little Miss Perfect. Realization dawned on me. You're using the money for drugs. Andrew let out a bitter laugh. Bingo. Give the girl a prize. I felt sick. Andrew, this is serious. You need help. I don't need anything from you, he spat. If you breathe a word of this to anyone, I'll make your life hell. As he stormed out, I sank to the floor, overwhelmed. What was I supposed to do? The next few days at school, I kept an eye on Andrew, noticing his bloodshot eyes and jittery demeanor. His behavior was spiraling, and it was only a matter of time before things got worse. A classmate pulled me aside one day, looking shaken. Mary, you should have seen it. We were in English, and Andrew just flipped out. Knocked his desk over and started yelling at Mrs. Johnson right in her face. Said, who cares about Shakespeare? Never seen him snap like that before. I tried to swallow my anxiety, but then an announcement crackled over the PA. Attention students, please remain in your classrooms. We will be conducting a routine locker check. My stomach dropped. I knew what they find in Andrew's locker. An hour later, I was called to the principal's office. Mr. Harmon's expression was grim. Mary, I understand Andrew is your stepbrother. I nodded, my mouth dry. We found illegal substances in his locker. Given the amount, we have reason to believe he may be dealing. I gasped, shocked. Dealing? No, he's just using. I stopped, realizing what I just admitted. Mr. Harmon leaned forward. Mary, what do you know about this? So I told him everything, the stealing, the mood swings, the threats. By the end, I was shaking. Mr. Harmon sighed. Thank you for your honesty. Unfortunately, given the severity of the situation, we'll need to involve the police and Child Protective Services. My head spun. The police? I'm sorry, Mary, but this is beyond the school's jurisdiction now. We'll need to contact your parents immediately. As I left the office on shaky legs, I saw Andrew being escorted out by 2 officers. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and in his gaze, I saw anger, fear, and something else. Desperation. I slumped against the wall, feeling my world crumble. How had it come to this? And how was I going to face my dad? Later that night, police cruisers pulled up to our house, lights flashing. From my window, I watched as 2 officers approached the front door. My dad answered, confusion etched on his face. Mr. Thompson, we need to speak with you and your son, Andrew. Dad's voice shook. What's this about? Sir, we have a warrant to search the premises. Your son was found in possession of illegal substances at school. I saw the color drain from Dad's face as he let them in. Jennifer came rushing down the stairs, eyes wide. What's going on? Andrew? The next hour was a blur. Police searched Andrew's room, uncovering more drugs and stolen cash. Andrew sat sullen and handcuffed, being questioned in the living room while I watched it all unfold, feeling like I was in some twisted movie. Dad turned to me, his eyes pleading. "Mary, did you know about this?" Before I could answer, Jennifer cut in, her voice dripping with accusation. Of course she knew. She's probably the one who ratted him out, always jealous of Andrew, weren't you? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you kidding me? Andrew's been stealing from me for months. He even threatened me when I caught him. Dad's head whipped around. He what? And just like that, everything came pouring out. The theft, the threats, and the way Jennifer had been treating me. Dad listened, his face growing darker with each revelation. "Why did he tell me?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Would you have believed me?" I shot back. "You've been so wrapped up in your new family, you didn't even notice what was happening." Jennifer screeched, "This is ridiculous, James. Are you really going to let her talk to me like that after everything we've done for her?" But something had shifted in Dad's eyes. He looked at Jennifer as though seeing her for the first time. "What you've done for her," he asked quietly, "you've made her feel unwelcome in her own home, pushed her out of her room, undermined our relationship, and ignored the fact that your son was spiraling out of control." Jennifer's face contorted with rage. "How dare you? This is all her fault. If she hadn't been such a little—" "Enough!" Dad roared. I had never heard him yell like that before. He turned to the officers. "I think you have what you need. Please take Andrew into custody." As they led Andrew out, he shot me a glare. "Hope you're happy now, sis." Jennifer grabbed her purse, her expression twisted with anger. "If you're choosing her over us, we're done. Don't bother calling." And with that, she stormed out. Just like that, they were gone, leaving the house in silence. The weight of everything that had happened settled over us like a heavy blanket. Dad and I stood there, neither of us knowing what to say. Finally, he spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "Mary, I'm so sorry. I've been a terrible father." I wanted to stay angry to make him feel the hurt and neglect I had felt. But seeing him so broken, I couldn't do it. "You really have, Dad." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I know. I got so caught up in trying to create this perfect new family that I forgot about the amazing one I already had. Can you ever forgive me?" I took a deep breath. "It's going to take time, Dad. A lot of time." We talked for hours that night, really talked for the first time in months. We spoke about Mom, our fears, and how we drifted apart. By the end, we were both emotionally drained. I said slowly, "I think I need some space to process everything." Dad looked pained but nodded. "I understand. What do you want to do?" "Can I stay with Aunt Sarah for a while? Just to finish out senior year." "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need." The next few months were a whirlwind. Moving in with Aunt Sarah, focusing on school, and slowly rebuilding my relationship with Dad. He started therapy, working through his grief over Mom and his guilt over what had happened with Jennifer and Andrew. And slowly Dad and I began to mend. It wasn't perfect, and things weren't the same as before, but he was trying. He visited regularly, always respecting my boundaries, showing me he was committed to making things right. I knew we still had a long way to go, but we were on the right path. The story of Mary, her father, and their fractured family has come to an end. Now I have a question for you. If you were in Mary's shoes, would you have forgiven your father? Or do you think some betrayals are too deep to truly move past? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm Rose, sitting in my cramped Chicago apartment, staring at the blinking cursor on my laptop screen. It mocks me as I try to churn out the next chapter of my novel. The pile of unpaid bills on the coffee table looms in the corner of my eye, a constant reminder that my barista job barely covers rent. But hey, a girl's got dreams, right? My phone buzzes, pulling me from my thoughts. It's my best friend, William. "Yo, Rose, how's the writing going?" I sigh. "About as well as my love life, non-existent." He chuckles. "Come on, it can't be that bad. Want to grab a coffee? I'm buying." You know Iceland coffee all day, right? But fine, meet you at Joe's in 20. I throw on a worn-out jacket and head out, the chilly Chicago wind nipping at my face. As I walk, my thoughts drift to my so-called family, My mom, Linda, had me when she was practically a kid herself, and my biological dad disappeared faster than you can say deadbeat. At Joe's, I spot William waving from our usual corner booth. He's already ordered my usual latte, bless him. Spill it, he says as I slide in across from him. What's got you looking like someone stole your last cookie? I take a sip, savoring the warmth before answering. Just family stuff, you know how it is. William nods, understanding in his eyes. He's heard it all before. Oliver and Nancy, he asks. Bingo. I don't even know why I bother anymore. I say, frustration simmering just beneath the surface. Oliver married my mom when I was 5, but he never treated me like I was his. And Nancy, my so-called sister, don't even get me started. They're still giving you a hard time. I nod, trying to keep my voice steady. It's been worse since Mom died. They don't even hide how much they don't want me around anymore. William reaches across the table, squeezing my hand. You don't need them, Rose. You've got friends who actually care about you. I know, I say, forcing a smile. It's just, they're supposed to be family, you know? As we finish our coffee, my phone pings with a new email. I open it, groaning at the sight of an overly formal invitation. What now? William asks, raising an eyebrow. It's an invite to Oliver's 55th birthday bash. Some fancy party at the mansion, I say, holding up my phone for him to see. Are you actually considering going? He asks, skepticism written all over his face. I hesitate, torn. Part of me wants to delete the email and forget I ever saw it. But another part, yeah, I think I will. I don't know why I keep torturing myself. But maybe this time will be different. William gives me a wary look. Just be careful, okay? And call me if you need an escape plan. I nod, though a knot forms in my stomach as I head home. Back in my apartment, I flop onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. The invitation feels like it's burning a hole in my pocket. I pull it out and read it again. You are cordially invited to celebrate Oliver Thompson's 55th birthday. Cordially, right. That's how they've always treated me, with forced politeness and a healthy dose of disdain. I can't help but remember Mom's funeral, the way Oliver and Nancy stood apart, like my grief was some contagious disease. The whispers, the sidelong glances, but still I keep going back, keep hoping that maybe this time they'll see me as part of the family. I grab my phone, typing out a quick RSVP. I'll be there. As I hit send, I wonder if I'm making a huge mistake. The night of the party, I find myself standing in front of Oliver's mansion, my hand hovering over the ornate doorbell. The muffled sounds of laughter and clinking glasses seep through the heavy door. I take a deep breath, smooth down my dress, and press the bell. A butler answers, his gaze sweeping over me with thinly veiled disdain. Name? Rose Johnson, I say, forcing confidence into my voice. I'm Oliver's stepdaughter. He raises an eyebrow but steps aside, allowing me in. The noise hits me like a wave. Dozens of people in designer clothes, chattering and sipping champagne. Rose, you made it. William's voice cuts through the din. I turn to see him pushing through the crowd, a grin plastered on his face. He pulls me into a hug. Wouldn't miss it, I reply, trying to smile. Thanks for being my plus one. Are you kidding? Free booze and a front row seat to the family drama. I'm all in, he jokes. I laugh, swatting his arm. Jerk. Come on, let's grab a drink. As we weave through the crowd, I can feel eyes on me, hear the whispers that trail in our wake. I try to focus on William's running commentary about the stuffy rich folks, but it's hard to ignore the feeling of being watched. Well, if it isn't the prodigal stepdaughter, a familiar voice sneers. I turn to see Nancy, dressed to the nines in a gown that probably costs more than my rent. A champagne flute dangles from her perfectly manicured fingers. Hello, Nancy, I say, forcing a polite smile. Happy birthday to Oliver. She smirks. Oh, I'm sure Daddy will be thrilled you remembered. He's over there, holding court with his business partners. Why don't you go say hello? Before I can respond, she saunters off, leaving a trail of expensive perfume. William squeezes my shoulder. You okay? Yeah, I mutter, downing my champagne in one gulp. Let's go find him. We spot Oliver surrounded by men in sharp suits, their conversation a blur of stock prices and mergers. I approach hesitantly. Oliver, I say, my voice barely a whisper. He turns, his smile faltering for just a second. Rose, you came, he says, pulling me into a stiff, awkward hug. Gentlemen, this is my stepdaughter. One of the men, younger than the rest, steps forward with a charming smile. Michael Davis. Pleasure to meet you, Rose. As Michael and I shook hands, I felt an unexpected flutter in my stomach. Maybe, just maybe, this evening wouldn't be so bad after all. For the next hour, I actually started to enjoy myself. Michael was charming, funny, and easy to talk to, and even Oliver seemed to be warming up. Soon Emma, Oliver's business partner's daughter, joined us, and the four of us were laughing and swapping stories. But then Nancy reappeared, clearly drunk, stumbling into our little circle. She latched onto Michael's arm, her eyes narrowing as she noticed me. Mikey, I see you've met my dear half-sister, she slurred, each word laced with bitterness. Did she tell you about her mysterious background? The mood shifted instantly. Michael's brow furrowed. What do you mean? He asked, his smile fading. Nancy's eyes gleamed with malice as she grinned. Oh, you didn't know? Rose here is of unknown parentage. Daddy took her in out of the goodness of his heart. The silence was suffocating. I felt the blood drain from my face as everyone turned to stare. Oliver cleared his throat but said nothing, his gaze firmly fixed on the floor. Michael looked between Nancy and me, clearly unsure how to respond. Emma gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth. Frozen in place, I barely registered Nancy's next words. It's quite the scandal, really. No one knows who her real father is. For all we know, she could be. That's enough, Nancy. William's voice sliced through the tension, and before I knew it, his arm was around my shoulders. Rose, let's go. As he led me away, I glanced back just once and caught Oliver's expression. He looked relieved, like he was glad to see me go. We burst out of the mansion and into the cool night air. I gulped down a shaky breath, trying to keep myself from falling apart. Rose, breathe. It's okay. They're not worth it, William murmured, pulling me into a hug. I shook my head, tears spilling over. How could she, in front of everyone? She's a miserable person, that's how. Come on, I'm taking you home. The ride back to my apartment was a blur. William tried to comfort me, but I barely heard him. All I could think about was the look on everyone's faces, the pity, the shock, the judgment. By the time we got to my place, my heart felt like it had been ripped open. I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto the couch. William lingered by the door. Do you want me to stay? He asked softly. I shook my head. No, I need to be alone right now. Thanks for everything, William. After he left, I sat in the dark, replaying the entire night in my mind. How could I have been so stupid to think that maybe, just maybe, they'd accept me this time? My phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a notification from Instagram. With shaking hands, I opened it. There it was, a post from Nancy, clearly made before the party. Can't wait to see everyone tonight. Well, almost everyone. Hashtag family secrets, hashtag unknown parentage. The comments were filled with laughing emojis, shocked faces, and questions. People I thought were friends, all chiming in and speculating about me. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a heart full of rage. Enough was enough. It was time to fight back. My first call was to Grandma Eleanor. We hadn't spoken much since Mom died, but I needed answers. Rose, is everything all right, dear? She asked, her voice concerned. Not really, Grandma. I need to talk to you about Mom and Oliver. There was a long pause before she responded. I suppose it's time you knew the truth. Come over for tea. An hour later, I was sitting in Grandma's cozy living room, clutching a steaming mug of tea as she looked at me, a sadness in her eyes. Your mother loved you more than anything, Rose, she began. But Oliver, he made her life hell. My hands tightened around the mug. What do you mean? He was controlling, manipulative. He isolated Linda from her friends, from me. And his business practices, let's just say they weren't entirely above board. As Grandma spoke, the pieces began to fall into place. I remembered the hushed arguments. I remember overhearing things as a child, the inexplicable mood swings, the way Oliver always seemed to get his way, how Mom would fall silent whenever he entered the room. But I never understood why no one said anything. Grandma's eyes filled with tears when I asked her. We tried, dear, but Oliver had everyone under his thumb, including Linda. He isolated her, made sure she had no one to turn to. I left Grandma's house with a heavy heart, but a newfound determination. The truth was uglier than I'd imagined, but I was done being in the dark. My next stop was William's place. "I need your help," I said the moment he opened the door. William raised an eyebrow. "We going to dig into Oliver's company?" I nodded. "I know it's risky, but we have to. I need to know what he's hiding." "Isn't that illegal?" he asked, a cautious smile tugging at his lips. "Not if we do it right. Come on, I know you've got connections in the finance world." For the next few days, William and I pored over public records, financial reports, and anything else we could get our hands on. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. "Holy," William muttered, staring at his laptop screen in disbelief. "Rose, look at this." I leaned over his shoulder, my eyes widening. "Is that what I think it is?" "Yep," he said grimly. "Looks like your dear old stepdad's been cooking the books for years. Embezzlement, fraud, you name it." Just then, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I hesitated but answered. "Rose? It's Emma. I'm really sorry about what happened at the party. I think there's something you should know about Nancy." We met at a quiet cafe later that afternoon. Emma looked nervous, her hands trembling as she held her coffee cup. "Nancy's been bullying people for years," she blurted out. "Not just you. I've got proof, screenshots, videos, everything." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, still stunned. Emma met my eyes with a fierce determination. "Because it's time someone stood up to her. And I think that someone is you." As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Michael. "Rose, we need to talk. I'm not just a business associate of Oliver's. I'm an undercover journalist investigating his company." My head was spinning. In just a few days, my whole world had turned upside down. But for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope. That night, I sat at my laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The cursor blinked at me, waiting. I took a deep breath and started typing. Chapter 1. The Girl in the Shadows. My tell-all book about growing up in a toxic family was finally taking shape. No real names, of course. I wasn't stupid, but the truth was all there. "And that's all the time we have for today's segment," the talk show host announced, turning to me with a smile. Join us next week when we'll be talking to Rose Johnson, author of the runaway bestseller Shadows in the Family Portrait. Rose, thanks for being here. I smiled at the camera, my heart racing. "Thanks for having me." The moment we went off air, my phone exploded with notifications. The book had struck a chord, sparking conversations about emotional abuse and toxic family dynamics across the country. But this was just the beginning. William burst into my apartment, waving a newspaper in his hand. "Have you seen this?" he asked, practically vibrating with excitement. I grabbed the paper, my eyes widening at the headline. "Thompson Industries under federal investigation for fraud." Michael's exposé had done its job. Oliver's carefully constructed empire was crumbling. My phone rang again. It was Emma, her voice breathless with excitement. It worked. The board saw the evidence of Nancy's bullying. She's been fired, and her social media is blowing up. No one wants to touch her with a 10-foot pole. I sank onto the couch, overwhelmed. It was actually happening. The truth was finally coming out. Then came the call I'd been dreading. "Rose," Oliver's voice was weak, strained. "I've had a heart attack. The doctors say it's stress. I know I have no right to ask, but I need you." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Oliver, but I can't be there for you. Not after everything you've done." "But we're family," he pleaded. "No, Oliver, we're not," I replied, my voice steady. "Take care of yourself." I hung up, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. The next day, another call came in. This time, it was Nancy, her voice tearful and apologetic. "Rose, I'm so sorry for everything. Can we talk?" I listened to her rambling apology, feeling nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just emptiness. "I hear you, Nancy, and I accept your apology. But that doesn't mean I want you in my life." I hung up, finally ready to move on. I had spent too many years chasing acceptance from people who never deserved my loyalty. Now, I was free.